Congressional District and serve as the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee on Crime, and have served previously as ranking member and chairman of that committee. I am very pleased, but not for this particular moment, to have this gathering of people to recognize what is a surge of human trafficking in this region and throughout the state of Texas. I want to thank Chairman Mike McCall, my original co-sponsor. Both Congressman McCall and myself held the first human trafficking field hearing in Houston, Texas in the mid-2000s as members of the Homeland Security Committee. And he has continued his commitment, along with our colleagues, on stamping out the scourge, the devastation of human trafficking. For anyone that does not recognize its sincerity, need not look any further than a sign that says, "Help me." A 13-year-old girl taken from Texas all the way to California. And because of her wise years, even though a young 13, she was able to find something to write on and hold up at a window when the perpetrator, who was victimizing her, had gone out to a laundromat, and they were able to see, "Help me." Our children should not be subjected to finding scraps of paper to save themselves from sex trafficking and human trafficking. A young woman stayed 2 weeks in Bush Intercontinental Airport, surviving on who knows what, a victim of human trafficking. And only a good Samaritan, a young woman, was able to detect that something was wrong. But let me really give it to you, which is, as reported recently, a prostitution ring in Brazoria County at Manville High School. 6 young women recruited as prostitutes, which is only now, if you will, a subset of human trafficking, right at the schools. As we begin to look toward school opening again, and for many areas 3 weeks, we think it is now the time for there to be the passage of H.R. 30. And I am delighted to be joined by my colleague, Wesley Hunt, who I'll introduce in just a moment. This bill is a bipartisan bill and would ensure that schools across the country are safe spaces for learning and academic exploration and free from the menace of human trafficking. Human trafficking offenses is what this bill deals with. Sentencing enhancement of up to 5 years beyond the original sentencing for any person who commits human trafficking offenses and other sex offenses. Outright recruiting prostitutes. And the way it was found at the Manville High School is one inside young woman was trying to recruit another young woman, and they got into a fight. This would, of course, involve minors that occur within 1,000 feet of schools, school-sponsored activities, so you could be somewhere away from a school, and as well the playground or public housing facility, at a juvenile detention center or a foster care placement facility, or within 100 feet of places, other places where children gather, for example, a youth center, public park, or public swimming pool. That public park could be a public amusement park. We're trying to make sure that children are not the victims and that they're not preyed upon. Any prison term imposed under this new penalty must be served consecutively with any prison term imposed for the underlying offense. In this way, the bill seeks to ensure that schools are safe havens for children and not soft targets for predators, like a shopping center, to find out that your child is targeted by a predator that can easily access school grounds, not to the fault of school, but because children have to come to a welcoming place. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children have received reports of sex trafficking in all 50 U.S. states. Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. These reports include incidences occurring in every type of community: suburban, rural, urban, and tribal lands. In 2020, 11,193 instances of potential human trafficking were reported by the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And last year, more than 19,000 reports of suspected child trafficking received by the National Center eclipsed the previous year when the center received more than 17,000. These are reported. These are not what goes unnoticed and unreported, and our children are victimized. To make matters worse, Texas consistently has the second or third highest number of calls to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, while an estimated 25% of all trafficking victims in the country can be found in the state, usually on Interstate 10 corridor at any given time, many of whom are minors. At least 5,359 trafficking victims and survivors identified through the hotline in 2019 were under the age of 18. But sadly, the average age that a young person becomes involved in sex trafficking is 12 to 14 years old. We know that Houston has been an epicenter of runaways, and runaways as well. We add that to the prey that these vile people can attempt to do. By the way, the person who sex trafficked the 13-year-old was over 60 years old. Just wonder what that child's like and how much we have to embrace them. A commercial sex act is any act where something of value, such as money, food, drugs, or a place to stay, is given or received by any person for sexual activity. These young girls don't deserve it. The average age that a young person becomes involved in sex trafficking is 12 years old. Child labor trafficking is using force, fraud, or coercion to compel a child under 18 to provide involuntary labor. And so today we come to urge our colleagues and our leadership, Democrats and Republicans, to move this legislation so that at least in the midst of school starting, the president can sign this bill and we can have in place a national headline: beware, stay away from schools, stay away from our precious children. We will not have it. We will not tolerate it. We're a civilized nation, and we will not tolerate the underage victims, either for sex trafficking, human trafficking, and as well labor trafficking. And let me be very clear. There is much work to do on drug trafficking. And the colleague that I'm about to introduce, we have many similar aspects of human trafficking. Is you can use the prey, the victim, over and over and over again. And it is a multi-billion-dollar business. And what you leave on the heap of life is a broken child that does not deserve. That child might have been president, might have been an astronaut, a lawyer, a teacher, a doctor, might have been a general in the United States military. And then you have taken their life, their breath away from them. Children and youth can be exploited in many ways, and there is no single face of what traffickers look like. Young victims of trafficking are sold by family members, exploited by gangs, and others who seek out vulnerable children and youth by offering food, money, or a place to stay. They appeal to those runaways. Another one of my causes, those aged out foster children become serious victims. Some traffickers target young victims through their friends or peers. And Human Trafficking Institute's 2020 federal report, 14% of child victims in active federal sex trafficking cases prosecutions were recorded by a friend or a peer. And so today, we have an array of people firsthand experience. How sad. I say thank God that they're here with us today. That they're alive and they are ready to be able to tell their story. And I want to pay special tribute to Courtney and her dad, who have allowed themselves to be exposed and the pain to be exposed all over the nation, and yes, in the United States Congress. It was her staggering and powerful testimony that drove us without ceasing to introduce the Stop Human Trafficking in School Zones. with my colleague and the Judiciary Committee's ranking member, Jerry Nadlin. And so, sex traffickers, beware. We're on to you. We will find a way through federal legislation and continue to encourage state legislation to be able to ensure that our children have a sign, "I'm too precious for you to take." They care too much about me for you to take. I am protected and you can't take me. I am valuable and you won't get me. That is what this legislation says. I'm very pleased to have my colleague here today, who I couldn't get out of the way for how fast he moved to be able to join us in this legislation after I asked him, and I'm very grateful. He is a native Houstonian. He proudly likes to say he went to that school, St. John's, and of course was accepted at West Point. Yes, a veteran, served in the United States military, particularly the U.S. Army, after he received his degree, and went on to spend 8 years as an aviation branch officer and an AH-64D Apache Longbow helicopter pilot. You've seen the raw side of life, and doesn't want our children to have to experience that right here in the United States of America. His combat deployment was in Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and upon completion, Captain Hunt attended Cornell University and earned a master's in business and a master's of industrial and labor relations. He is different from Sheila Jackson Lee, but we have come to advocate on issues for our constituents and for this nation. I'm certainly grateful for his support. Since I met his wife, Victoria, I need to say her name, and he now has 2 beautiful children, and they travel quite well to Washington, D.C., even though both of them are under 5 years old. So thank you very much, Congressman, for being here, and you are presented now.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
First of all, this is such a sobering topic to discuss in this country today, and it shouldn't be happening here. As somebody that's served abroad in combat, I understand, as you so eloquently put it, ma'am, the raw realities of life that happen abroad, but should not be happening in our great nation. Sheila Jackson is a Democrat. Wesley Hunt is a Republican. None of that matters when it comes to protecting our children.
Amen.
We in this country need a lot of healing and to find ways for us to come together on issues of public safety and protecting that which matters most, and that is, in fact, our children. Congresswoman Lee approached me on the House floor a couple of months ago, and I've only been around for about 6 months now, so I'm relatively new to the job. You say we're different, it's because you're a seasoned veteran and I'm too young. She approached me and said, "Wesley, we have a problem in Houston. Houston is known as the energy capital of the world. We're known as the food capital of the world. We are the most diverse city in the world, and we have a problem. We are also the human trafficking capital of the world as well. And Wesley, I want you to join me on HR 30 to help fix this problem." And in that moment, I realized that partisan politics had nothing to do with this. Nothing. What I realize is, as fellow Houstonians coming together to work in the betterment of every single Houstonian, of every single Texan, and of every single American, that's what's coming first. And you know what? It's rare to see that these days.
Yeah.
Very rare. But we get to stand here together as colleagues to work for you. One of my favorite sayings is, at this point at the federal level, you don't work for us, we work for you.
That's right. That's right.
We're answering the call to work for you. My colleague articulated a few of the highlights. I want to reiterate some of these highlights. This bill establishes an enhanced penalty for additional prison terms of up to 5 years more for certain human trafficking offenses and sex offenses involving minors that occur within 1,000 feet of real property comprised of schools and school-sponsored activities, 100 feet of other places where children gather. Think about that. And while this is not enough, it's a start. Because for those people that abuse our children, there's a nice place in hell for them, in my opinion. I am honored to be here with you, ma'am. Thank you so much for involving me. Thank you so much for putting aside all partisan politics so we can get to work for you. I want to thank everyone standing behind me in this fight. And again, it's not about race, religion, color, or creed. It's about the very safety of our children. As a young man with a 4-year-old daughter, a 2-year-old daughter, and a 6-month-old little boy, if you've ever held these children,
that's right,
you will know it's the most precious thing that God can ever give us. And it's up to us to protect them. And thank you, ma'am, for allowing me to be a part of this mission. Thank you.
Already we know we have a victory. He's part of the mission. And that's the way we're going to get it done. There's a mindset of a mission, and that is how we will get this done. Let me ask Jackie to come. And we have a lot of enriched speakers. And so we ask you to hit us with the important points as we bring after you our elected officials. Let me acknowledge Commissioner Ronnie Ellis is represented by Erica Lee Carter, his policy director, and Mr. and another staff that he had here, but we're delighted that he has blessed us with representation. But in any event, if you would come, thank you so very much. We are in. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. And let me thank Congressman Hunt. Thank you again.
God bless you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Of course, absolutely my pleasure. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for everyone who is here. Everyone in this room has an incredibly busy schedule and is fighting to combat human trafficking. I'd like to thank the survivor leaders and overcomers that have come today. Eileen Dunn, Angela Williams, and Courtney Litvack. Her father, Alan Litvack. It's not easy to talk about being trafficked. And so I want to get into what trafficking looks like in the United States of America. We've all heard about the movie Sound of Freedom, and it's created this incredible buzz. But we need to start talking about what the sex slave trade looks like in America and why this bill is so important. Over 60% of children who are sex trafficked within the United States of America come from the child welfare system. There was just a statement given by DPS, the Texas State Department Police, that 210 of their missing children that were in foster care had all been sex trafficked. This is not just in the state of Texas. This is happening in every nation. In 2009, the U.S. Education Department had put together a presentation saying that their schools were under attack, that recruiting and grooming were happening, and that was 15 years ago. So we're not talking about a problem that just started, but we're talking about a problem where this appetite continues to grow and grow and grow. Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficked 82 children out of one high school, the Royal Palms. 82. It started with one girl who recruited another girl because he told his sex trafficking victims, for every girl you bring me, I will give you $300. And that's what recruiting looks like in America. And some of these kids didn't have a choice. And like the Congresswoman had said about the school in Texas, about there was a fight with the girls, that is happening across our nation. Peer-on-peer exploitation is happening everywhere. And it is our job to fight and protect our children. And when we talk about that, we really have to talk about both political parties need to put their agendas down. We are talking about human rights. We are talking about the safety of our children. And we are not going to go silent. Right now, you see an army, but there is going to be a much more mighty army. Because as more and more children get violated and trafficked and exploited, more and more families and people are going to come together. H.R. 30 was put into place because we need a nation to stop talking about lip service and start implementing systems that actually protect children, and we put our money where our mouth is. HR 30 will not only implement systems and structures to protect our children and hold predators accountable, which needs to happen. Because as victims are getting victimized across this nation, there is no accountability, there is no justice. And that needs to change. This bill is saying we demand justice.
Right.
We're going to have justice, and we're not going to stop until we get justice. Any elected official who thinks that they're going to stop us, we're here to tell you, you will not. You will not stop us. Because there is an army of parents and foster care children and lived experience experts and religious groups all across our nation coming together, putting down corruption. We don't want co-opted groups. We don't want corruption. We want humanity. We want brave leaders that are going to fight for our children and implement systems that are going to protect our people of this great nation. And so I ask you today to pass HR 30, which needs to get passed out of the House, for all the Republicans and Democrats to work together, to want to come together, to want to be these great leaders that we need for them to be, to say these are our children, this is America, and the slave trade is not going to happen here. Children are not products, people are not products, and we are not for sale. And we will not let ourselves be for sale. So please, HR 30, this bill was so important. No trafficking zone. I'm Jacqueline Wood, I'm the president of that organization. We have been studying this for 2 decades, meeting Courtney Litvack and other girls across our nation who have been sex trafficked. We haven't even talked about the boys yet. 30% of boys are sex trafficked. Sextortion is at a 5,000% higher rate, where you see young men killing themselves. That is also commercial sexual exploitation. So we understand about sex trafficking. Understand that this bill will also help stop the intersection of internet trafficking and grooming with schools and foster care and shelters. So again, I urge you, I urge everyone, and I urge everyone in our nation to come together to pass HR 30. I want to thank Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee for being a champion. She had passed with FOSTA Sester bill for the amendments for victims to get restitution. I don't think most people know that. So when every victim gets restitution for FOSTA and SESTA, when people were bought and sold on 3 different continents, it was this elected official that fought for that, that went up against big tech and big companies and fought for it. I want to thank Wesley Hunt and Congressman McCall to understand and be great leaders that Republicans and Democrats can come together. It's about time our elected officials are adults and start working together for the unpeople. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me also acknowledge the support of Chief Troy Finner, who is out of town today. But we cannot do this work if we get a federal bill. We cannot do this work until it initiates and starts with the collaboration between our local law enforcement on the ground, eyes on the ground, defenders of our children on the ground. And I'm so grateful to have, first of all, the district attorney who has been doing a stunningly excellent job from Fort Bend, and that is Brian Middleton. Thank you very much.
Congressman Hunt was correct in characterizing it as a mission. To our viewers, let there be no doubt that human trafficking exists. It exists in every community, and that's why we need the federal government's support to eradicate this problem. None of these victims deserve to be trafficked. In each instance, there was a failure of the normal protection that we have in place for our children that failed them and allowed them to be victimized by traffickers. It is not their fault, it's the traffickers. It's the people demanding these services. And I have been committed to this mission since I was elected.
That's right.
I urge Congress to pass House Resolution 30 and to continue to support our efforts to eradicate human trafficking in our community. And I can tell you, I'm surrounded by survivors and soldiers in the war against human trafficking. I have Lieutenant David Hall, who's at my office. His sole responsibility is to eradicate human trafficking. and my first assistant, Brahim Kawaja, we work tirelessly on this mission. Our children are our future and our responsibility. And we accept that challenge, and we're on this mission. And I thank you, Congressman, for presenting this House resolution. Thank you.
These are dark moments, but when I hear elected officials who are officially on the ground, thank you, DA Middleton, we know the work that you have to do. It just touches my heart. And this gentleman touches my heart because he has had 2 decades of being with the Houston Police Department, being on the ground in some of the seedier parts of our community trying to fight crime. And I am proud of him. He now has elevated to the highest law enforcement position in Fort Bend County, and that is the sheriff of Fort Bend County, who we're so glad to have here, Eric Fagan.
I'm proud to be here, and also I'm sad to be here on this occasion. I want to thank Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee for leading this fight. I also want to thank Courtney and the other victims, which I don't like calling them victims, I want to call them survivors and sheroes. This is a problem that we all face. It's not a Republican problem. It's not a Democratic problem. It's not a black or white problem. It's a humanitarian problem. It touches everyone, every walk of life. Your economic standing doesn't matter. Your education standing doesn't matter. Our children are being victimized at all levels, at all age groups. I've heard of human trafficker victims young as 8 years old. 8 years old. Just think of that. And why is it? It's because this is a commodity these predators think they can use over and over and over again. This bill gives us the power to fight. This bill gives teeth to this problem, where these traffickers know now they'll do real time, federal time. So again, I'm here, and as long as I'm the sheriff of Fort Bend County, and want all sheriffs in all 254 counties, we all will stand and fight to make sure that our children are safe. Texas should be known for being a great state of protecting its children, not a great state where we sell our children. And that's what's happening. And we're going to change that. Thank you so very much for bringing this forward. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. I'm very pleased that Harris County is represented. I know the commissioner will listen for a little while, but I do want to acknowledge the presence of Commissioner Rodney Ellis, and who has the ability to have a holistic outreach to this issue. And we will be, as we have been in the past, the federal government and Harris County have been great partners on working for the most vulnerable people in our community. So I'm very glad of his presence here, and I know that he will take this time to listen to Courtney Litvak. Her dad is here as well, and we have 2 victims, and then we will bring on Bishop, who has had an enormous Dixon presence. We have Bishop Livingston, we have President Morrison, Northeast Ministers. So we are really joined by people who are putting their boxing gloves on and saying, not on my watch. And that's the way I feel today, not on my watch. In this heat, you can go out in places where these children hang out. I'm talking about the runaways and aged out, because I've encountered the aged out foster kids who have no place to go. I had one shadow me in Washington. I participate in the foster children's caucus, and I had one shadow me, and to listen to their story, to listen to the story of the young woman that I dealt with in just a few weeks ago, who was also aged out foster young woman, a wonderful young woman. And these are vulnerable people, but as has been said, human trafficking is not a respect of income or faith or family. This is not a judgment of families. It is a scourge. Courtney?
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. I really want to restate what is an echo, what has been shared here. Congresswoman, you're a constant face on the front lines with us in this battle. For that, I thank you more than words could express. You show up, you are in these streets, and you are in DC fighting for us, fighting for people like me, who are so fortunate to have lived through the lived experience of sex trafficking, but so many people do not. So many families are torn apart. Children's lives are derailed. Their futures are taken into the hands of predators. Well, we are here today to urge for the passing of H.R. 30 to take back our children's futures, because they are our nation's future. They truly are. My name is Courtney Litvak, and I am a survivor leader. I'm a proud former member of the U.S. Advisory Council to Combat Human Trafficking with the President's Interagency Task Force, and I'm also a proud Houstonian, and I'm just Courtney as well, but I am here to advocate on behalf of the many people who have lost their lives and who are right now waiting for legislation such as H.R. 30 to pass, so that they too may have a chance and a hope for their future that God promises all of us, Jeremiah 29:11. But the enemy is prowling like a lion, like a roaring lion. But we have the Lion of Judah. Listen to me right now. You heard Jacqueline say it. There is an army rising up. It is palpable in the air. The times we are in right now, what we choose to do and our inaction will shape the future of this nation. The United States should be a leader for the rest of the world on how we should fight and protect our children at all times. They are our most precious gems and treasures. As I look out onto our audience today, everybody comes from a different background and understanding and level of knowledge with this issue of human trafficking. But when you want to talk about an army, I think of the people and the experts who are here with me today. And I want to thank you all, Congresswoman, Congressman Hunt, Congressman Michael McCall, Jacqueline, NTZ, Bishop Dixon, Bishop Livingston, D.A. Middleton, everybody here who works together in order to make a great impact. But armies need to rise up in every state across the U.S. And I would like to share, knowing just how critical this is from firsthand experience. My life was almost taken from my high school. I was lured by fellow peers and athletes, students, hidden all in plain sight, teachers, admin, friends. They did not know, or we didn't even talk about or understand or hear about the issue of human trafficking. We did not know it had actually been happening in our own backyard for decades. I myself was taken from my hometown of Houston and trafficked across the country, all to find out that other victims who were being trafficked alongside me had been taken from Katy, Texas, decade prior to my own experience. It is unacceptable how long this crime has been able to grow and evolve. Well, we need to evolve faster and get ahead of this crime. H.R. 30 will prevent children in the first place from falling victim and give admin, teachers, law enforcement, our incredible law enforcement, Sheriff Fagan, who left Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, the fire department, HPD, we all have to come together, but they need resources and legislation to help them in their work. They are already so overwhelmed. As you already heard, unfortunately, my home state, my home city of Houston is the hub for trafficking, and it started at my school in Houston, Texas. I should not be here today. Had H.R. 30 been passed years ago, it could have changed the course of my own life. But I am so encouraged because we are not just here with excitement for this bill. We are here with a righteous anger that we will not stop until it is passed. And God forbid if you haven't already grasped it by now, we will not stop. Devil, we remind you that you are on borrowed time and you are already defeated, and Jesus will have the final say. We are his children. thank you for letting me be here today, and I urge Congress, pass H.R. 30, Stop Trafficking in School Zones Act, out of the House. Get it to the President's desk.
Get it to the President's desk. Thank you. We're going to listen, and you all going to come at the same time. We want to listen to Natalie. Okay. And is this... Angela? Where's Angela? Okay. Right, and I don't see where you typed her name. Eileen. Okay, so the teacher and the, you come on first, please. Thank you, just introduce yourself. You're next, and then the teacher, please come stand here, please. Thank you, and then we will get Bishop, and thank you. These are stories of survivors, and then to let you know how real it is. Let me say this, when this bill passes, we'll have the resources of the Department of Education as well.
Yes.
Because they too will be part of working with schools to be bold. I know that Bishop will share it. There's something about putting a sign up saying no human trafficking or no trafficking zone. And we can use this federal legislation for school districts to be bold about putting it forward. And that's another point. We want to open it up so that school districts are not like what Courtney said, which is no one even whispered the word to have her informed as to something that was coming at her was not right. And the same thing in Manville. What was going on? They were able to recruit 6 prostitutes of children and sex trafficking. It's just as real, sex trafficking. But to have the national banner, this is a federal law, this is outlawed, then it becomes a national crusade for all of us. Thank you, Commissioner Ellis. Thank you. Please, Angela.
Hi, my name is Angela Williams. I'm a survivor and advocate against human trafficking. I am born and raised in Houston, Texas, which is known as a hub for domestic sex trafficking in the United States. I was trafficked out of high school at the age of 17 in 2nd Ward through being recruited by a high school friend. From there, I was groomed for a year, and my trafficker would drive me from junior college to vocational school and just sow seeds and desensitize me until he put me in his trafficking ring, which was brothels stationed in strip malls all throughout Houston. There was laws that made it a harsher crime for him to do the things that he did and preyed on the minors that were being exploited by him, I probably wouldn't be here today. He'd probably be in jail. But he ended up trafficking girls nationally for years. And here I am. When I was extracted out of sex trafficking, I realized that I couldn't just not look back. There's no way I could be here today and fight to save our youth. I'm a mother as well, and protecting the innocence of our children to not be exploited, not have their innocence taken, and have psychological damage that stays with them for the rest of their life. Whether they hold it inside or they seek help through therapy, it stays their entire life. The Stockholm, the PTSD, all of the spiritual damage that a person goes through when their innocence is taken, especially as a minor, is devastating. So to help, it's music to my ears, and an honor to be here with Sheila Jackson Lee and all of the freedom fighters. It's music to, it's music to my ears to see a group of people willing to step up and hold accountability to hold these traffickers and these predators accountable for the things that they do to our youth.
Thank you, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and thank you all the freedom fighters and warriors, fearless warriors who are here My name is Eileen Dong. I was a former counsel with the Texas Human Trafficking Survivor Leader Council. I now work with the Center for Combating Human Trafficking at the United Nations. As a matter of fact, I will be speaking on World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. But here's my story. Imagine you wake up one morning 8,000 miles away from your home. And with all my family on the other side of the ocean, being trafficked, abused, with nowhere to go, threatened by the perpetrator. I often wake up still today with nightmares of the trafficker trying to chase me. And I had a vision one day, freaked myself out when I was sleeping, that was chasing me to the edge of the cliff with nowhere to go. And there was that cliff, so deep. If I jump, I will die. But across the other side of the cliff, there's that sun, and there's the hope. And today, I want to tell you that I have survived, just like many of my warrior sisters and brothers. And like Congresswoman said, boys are also, men are also victims. But so many others are still suffering. And there are many reasons they're suffering. Education, like I said, coercion, the threats, the financial resources, and everything. And everyone can be a victim, regardless of their social, economic, education, and it is a bipartisan issue. It is a non-political issue.
Yes.
And I support this bill because we must free our children. Our children are supposed to be innocent. And for the same reason, I started my nonprofit organization, Hope Picks Global, to help everyone, people from all backgrounds, because they are all human beings. This is a human rights issue. This is regardless of black, white, Asian, or girl or boys, everyone. I know people who are trafficked who are 80 years old. I know people who are trafficked who are 2 months old. Very sadly. Amen. And we need to end this. And this is the devil. Someone mentioned about the devil. I cannot tell you how many times I have the devil in our way. I have our volunteers who got cancer from nowhere. I have traffickers threaten us. I even have our own people get in the way by the devil. But we're not going to stop until this ends. And it's going to take an army. It's going to take decades. But it has to start here. Yes. And I urge you all to support this bill. And thank you all. Thank you, Congresswoman.
As I asked a teacher to come forward, when Congressman McCall and myself started this, it was on the backs of finding so many trafficked persons in airports, on airplanes, and many of them were from the AAPI community, were Asian, that they were bringing over from many different parts of Asia, and trafficking these people. And some of them were, and they were women. In this instance, some of them were labor trafficked. So this is an epidemic. We want to make sure that we have the knowledge of that. So I'd like to bring forward our teacher, and I understand Melissa Lopez is here for Houston Police Department. We're excited about your presence here, and we'll acknowledge you in a moment. And then I want to acknowledge Lynn Liu, who has come to support. She will be Dr. Lynn Liu soon, but she's involved with women's issues, and I'm very proud, and AAPI, and I'm very proud of the leadership she gives to our community. So let me ask our Natalie to come forward, please. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for being here. And thank you, Congresswoman again and NTZ for having me. My name is Natalie Collins, and it is my pleasure to be here today and to advocate for this critical legislation for our country. This issue is very close to my heart, not only because I am a middle school teacher, but also because my best friend since middle school, Courtney Litvack, was trafficked starting from our own high school, our junior year. sorry.
It's all right.
She was the last person anyone would have expected for this to happen to. Literally the last person. Sorry. No one can even begin to imagine what she and the other courageous survivor leaders have had to overcome to get to where they are now. Every kind of exploitation and human trafficking is taking place every day. Every day. In our nation, we must prioritize preventing this crime and combating domestic trafficking. HR 30 does just that. It's happened to my best friend in our backyard, and it began at our high school, like she said. As a teacher, I know and understand too well old and new hardships that these kids are going through and that they're faced with every single day. Some of our students are already at a higher risk for trafficking because of some of the many issues that may include but are not limited to poverty, a lack of support system at home, and the list goes on. But schools can be ground zero. They can be ground zero for all of us to positively contribute to and intervene if need be in a child's life. I will do anything to further protect my students and set them on a path to success. But we and most other school admin are greatly lacking in resources to combat this crime as much as it's happening today. NTZ and Amazing Allies have successfully passed SB 1831 for the state of Texas, which was such a huge step in the right direction, but we cannot stop until every school across America becomes certified. HR 30 is the bill we need to make a greater impact by filling the gaps we all continue to see our students and youth falling through. It can make all the difference for these students and families who are showing signs of grooming, being lured, and or trafficked while they're in school. There are many instances I can think of, but a couple of real examples include some students sharing with other teachers or even each other that they're downloading inappropriate apps like Tinder, Snapchat, Kik, Instagram, and they're talking to older people. Some of these kids are 11 years old. They're 11 years old and these older people are telling them like, hey, let's go on a date, I'll treat you right. Like, they're 11. Some of them are 11. They don't understand the major risk and the long-term potential consequences. Seemingly harmless choices that they make at such a young age. It's unacceptable. It's just absolutely disgusting. Although they know that we have to report this to the higher ups and to their parents, we have a special opportunity to be there for them, to build good connections with them, to build a safe space and build trust with them so that they know that they can always have someone that is going to be there to listen to them and help lead them to the right resources. But we need your help. I urge you all and Congress to support the passing of Stop Trafficking in School Zones Act, HR 30. Thank you. And
Thank you. We need you spread all the way around. Thank you so very much. Alan, would you come up and join us? How many parents are not able to speak? And let me have our distinguished officer from Fort Bend, who deals with it every day, will give us just a snippet. And I'm not sure whether Melissa, Miss Melissa is representing Chief Finner, and just raise your hand so we can see you. Can't see you there. Come over this way. And hand way up. There you go. All right. We're grateful for the work that you all do, and I keep up with these. I have an automatic elevator that goes up, but I think you all were the one. I know there was an online solicitation. Someone was arrested just a few days ago of an individual trying to come and get a teenager or child in this area. So we know that law enforcement has to be we call it on point. I'm going to be very young and say on point. Thank you so very much. If I might, Dad.
You can call me anything you want, Congresswoman. Thank you. Thank you for being an example as a Houstonian, as a Texan, as a human, and as a leader in Congress. We need leaders in Congress like Sheila Jackson Lee and Wesley Hunt and Michael McCall. Thank you. My family is indebted to the Congresswoman because y'all don't see and hear the 3 a.m. phone calls and the midnight meetings of her and her staff fighting this evil. And that's what this is. And all that's necessary for evil to triumph is for good men and women to do nothing. Meet the people who refuse to do nothing. Meet the face of H.R. 30. H.R. 30 is not a black and white bill that's going to go to the desk of the President of the United States. Meet H.R. 30. Meet the heroes and the survivors, and we don't need your help. You need to be involved in this fight so that you're not one of us.
Yes.
You don't want to be any of the heroes that I know up here, from the Congresswoman to my daughter, to a teacher whose best friend was trafficked, to a young lady. You don't want to be any of us. Don't wait. Because we're not going to win. We've already won. But the only way that we've already won is for every single person that sees this to do something. You don't have to be up at midnight like the Congresswoman and her staff. You're welcome to. Y'all can use all the help you can get. And by the way, nobody knows a better path to get this done than the Congresswoman. We have the right people. Bishop, Jacqueline, we have the right people, but we need more soldiers. Don't wait until it hits your daughter. Don't wait until you go 40 days not knowing if your daughter's alive. Don't wait until it affects your family. Because if it isn't yet, it's going to. Because the enemy is relentless. The enemy does not care about a single one of these people. They don't care about your family. Media, thank you for being here today. Media who's not here today, I'm calling you out. I'm a reformed media person. 25 years in the media.
Thank you, Dad.
Share the wisdom and the knowledge that Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, that my daughter, who's my hero, that Natalie, that these survivors, that people like Congressman Hunt, Sheriff, God bless the Sheriff of Fort Bend County. And there was a time when I couldn't say that as a dad. God bless D.A. Brian Middleton. We have the right people to lead this, but we need more soldiers. Don't wait until it's your daughter. Do not wait until it's one of your students. You don't have to do everything Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee's doing, although she would love it if you would. You don't have to do that, but everybody's got a part to play in this. Media, I'm calling you out, media. This should be a room full of media. Thank you for being here. This should be because every single person in the media's got family. You don't have to have kids. You can have nieces and nephews or grandkids.
That's right.
And if you don't, someone you know does. We have a problem in America. Unless it hits us in the face these days, we're too busy with social media and our phones for the most important thing in this country, which is our kids. The most important thing in this country is our kids. And so I cannot applaud Congresswoman Lee and Congressman Hunt and Congressman McCall enough for working together. This is the United States of America, y'all. This is one of the greatest cities and the greatest state in the world. And we've got a problem, Houston. And we know the answer, and we know the solution, and these people are the solution, and so are you. So pray about it, talk about it, go see the movie. God bless the movie is waking people up. A mom with 2 little kids was in Home Depot on Monday, and a woman came up and said, there's a creepy guy following you and your daughters around Home Depot. And scared the you-know-what out of the mom. She said, how did you know that? Because I went and saw the movie. Go see the movie. Go on the congressman's website. Call her staff. Call Congressman McCall's staff, call Congressman Hunt. Most of all, call your elected officials. They need to be doing this without us begging them. As a dad, I'm begging you. I'm begging every single one of you that sees this, do your part. Because greater are we than those that are around us. The enemy thinks that the enemy's big and powerful. We're bigger, we're more powerful. We've got the leaders, we've got the heroes. We need you. And as a dad, you don't want to be up here in my shoes. Thank you.
For 40 days, Alan did not know where his precious daughter was. I think that sentence speaks for it all. So will you come for a moment so that we can have our pastors and Dr. Wright will give you a moment if you just come toward this space here for a moment. And we want to make sure, please, thank you so very much for being here.
I'm Lieutenant David Hall with the Fort Wayne County District Attorney's Office. I'm Lieutenant of the Human Trafficking Division Office. We've been fighting human trafficking since 2016, and it's been the motto of the Fort Wayne County DA's office, and it should be every day motto. To take the fight to the predators who are out there, the traffickers. Our motto is to be proactive and go out and find the survivors. And since we've been doing this in 2016, we've noticed that a lot of our survivors that we get are high school age, and we're recruited out of their high schools, which are all over the state and anywhere and everywhere. HR Bill 30 is going to give us a tool in our tool belt, another tool to prosecute these individuals and to take the fight to them. Thank you.
Let me thank you so very much. That's a powerful statement. Let me, as they prosecute, just imagine that they can have enhanced collaborators in the federal government with federal prosecutors collaborating, making cases with you. Thank you so very much. Some of your folks may traffic across interstate lines, and you'll have something to hold on to, double enforcement. So thank you for your work. Dr. Wright, please, thank you for your work as well and your passion.
Thank you. So first I'd like to call Rebecca Alcazar. I'm going to have her join me. She's one of my students. My name is Dr. Caesar Wright. I'm a college professor. I also run a number of technology programs for Microsoft. And I've had the amazing privilege over the past few semesters to work with a really inspiring group of students. And Rebecca, so let me give a little bit of an introduction because she's going to be too modest to do it. So Rebecca was one of my students in one of my public speaking classes early on. I was so shy she'd wear her mask, I think, so she felt like she didn't have to talk in class. And now she's regularly doing press conferences, spreading the word about human trafficking. But more importantly, she and a group of our students at University of St. Thomas have taken on a challenge to share all of this work and the information that you need to know about trafficking with the community and human slavery. It's a new form of human slavery. And they've done that through the Unmuted podcast. I'm going to ask Rebecca to talk a little bit about that.
Sure, absolutely. It's been a beautiful experience to be able to do something about it and not just listen to people talk about horrible experiences, but realize that everybody has a part to play. Even students that don't have a voice, you can make a voice. And I'd like to talk about, we grew up understanding that police officers are protected, firefighters without fires, teachers have your best future in mind. And then you grow up and you realize that that's not always the case. And it's heartbreaking because that's not what you expected. As a sister to someone in junior high, listening to Natalie, a junior high teacher, how she spoke today, talking about the dangers that she sees within her students, it was very moving. Because it's true. I've said before that I live in a very distracted generation, and that's why we're so easily manipulated. But I'd like to add to that and say, actually, we live in a very distracted society. Very distracted society. We've abandoned students to their devices. We've abandoned students to learn for themselves and to be easily manipulated. You know, Congresswoman, you said before, you said that you want every child to have a sign that says, "Don't take me." And I agree with that, and I'll add to that, don't deceive me. Don't distract me. Don't make me think you love me. Don't make me think this is what love is. As I was learning about human trafficking, I realized it's not just limited to abductions. It's psychological. There is a stronghold that you don't even know is there. And the people we're talking about that know they were trafficked have an advantage. Some people don't even know they're being trafficked. And it's horrible to say that. because of the awful experiences they go through. And I look up and I admire Courtney Liftach, the rest of the survivor leaders that spoke today, because it's painful to think about it. Now, to speak about it, to speak to the media about it, to speak to the public about it, and fight for others is not easy. And they do it weekly. They put themselves out there, and they've raised an army. And I'm so grateful that we've worked with No Trafficking Zone. I'm so grateful for the University of St. Thomas to put initiatives and partnerships forward. And No Trafficking Zone has Students Against Slavery initiative that is now at the University of St. Thomas and will spread to other campuses. And it's so powerful because it spread awareness and allowed students to spread awareness within themselves, because we have no idea. I mean, there's human trafficking clubs that have 0 attendees. That's it. That's all that's talked about. All you know is that the van is going to pull up and grab you and kidnap you, and that's it. But it's not talked about the manipulation that goes on. The spiritual side of it, don't even get me started. I mean, Courtney talks about it, and she says it beautifully. You know, there's such a spiritual aspect to this, and she's right. Jesus is there for everyone, and he expects us to move just like he did, to have courage, as Jacqueline likes to say, that Jesus had courage. So we should have courage. Thank you, Dr. Wright, for everything.
Let me give a closing comment based on something Rebecca said, and we'll do it very quickly. If knowledge is power, then education is empowerment. And everybody up here has a unique set of skills and knowledge and abilities. When you hear, these are not victims, these are survivor leaders, meaning they're able to lead and they're empowered through the life experiences, however tragic they've had, to help others. And the Congresswoman, you don't realize how tirelessly she worked. She was at an award banquet last night celebrating humanitarians for doing this kind of work. So I ask all of you optimistically to reach out. We know that she's going to drive this legislation that's going to be passed. And when it is, we need the entire community to rally around getting the word out and making sure that every one of you plays whatever small part you can in driving this home.
Doctor, thank you so very much. As Bishop comes, let me, I don't know whether Ling Lu, just one word on the AAPI, just their support, so we want to get to Bishop.
Thank you, Councilwoman Sheila Jackson Lee, to brought up the HR 30 to fight the human trafficking. AAPI is not out of the picture. I heard so many stories. We can see we have AAPI victims here. I want to urge everybody to support Councilman's bill, and the Congress support the bill, pass the bill, and then protect not just all the AAPI people, all the American people. As a parent, I'm scared. I never heard about so many victims talking about so sad stories. I was crying. I was scared. I have a daughter. She's living abroad. She's a college student. Every time I ask her to be careful, do not let people give you some drink, do not be getting lured into some situation. I'm always keep her on my location finder. She's always on my phone. I always look at her and said, if my daughter is not on my phone here, I will be asking her where you are. This is what I'm doing. We share her location everywhere. So as long as we have this government support, Congresswoman support, we families, parents need to keep your eyes on your children. As long as your families keep an eye on your children, keep them educated, we will reduce the crime, reduce the victims. Thank you, Councilwoman. AAPI will support anything you're doing. We are here, and we're here to support you, your own leaders and heroes. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. As the bishop who has been, Bishop James Dixon, has taken this to houses of worship, to his own church. He's taken it to huge sports facilities. He has championed this in Washington, D.C., in Austin, Texas, and he has championed it in places where people would not expect a person to bring the topic up. As he comes, do I not need to emphasize where we are in Texas? Second or third highest number of calls to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, and estimated 25% of all human trafficking victims in the country are in this state. And I will lead with this article. Fort Worth Star-Telegram, youth pastor, high school football coach, and hospital director among 46 men arrested in North Texas sex trafficking cases. This is human trafficking. It's all around us. It may be your neighbor, but don't let it be, as Alan has said, don't let it be you, because in actuality, to not know where your daughter is for 40 days is a nightmare that no parent wants to face. Bishop James Dixon, thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I'm going to ask that Bishop Livingston and Pastor Morrison just come closer. Stand here about Jacqueline Jones now on the other side. They've both got broad shoulders. Let me say, Congresswoman Lee, thank you so very much again for your consistency as it relates to fighting this issue and championing this cause. Some people come by and they visit, but the Congresswoman is perpetually committed to this issue. And certainly to Chaplain Caluto, there are no words for her energy, passion, and conviction concerning fighting trafficking throughout the city, state, and nation. And you heard her passion earlier. And so I think we're going to give both the Congresswoman and Chaplain a hand. Everything they're working on together, you know, they're like bulldogs about it. But thank you all so very, very much. And to all the survivor leaders who have spoken today, we can't say enough about them. I'm broken on the inside. I'm doing my best to maintain a posture. As I stand here today, listening to these survivor leaders and to Alan Lidback, a father who's lived this nightmare from the inside out, and yet has the courage to stand before us today. And to each one of you, I'm moved beyond measure, Congresswoman. Let me just simply say thank you to Bishop Livingston, who is a part of NTZ Faith, and Pastor Morrison with NTZ Faith, and they're leaders in their own rights. I want to say very quickly, succinctly, there are no words for the kind of leaders who can ignore this cause. I want to just speak in terms of a few different actions that I think will assist us with, first of all, getting House Resolution 30 passed. That's the focus of today. But I think pastors across the country should have a list of every elected official, Congresswoman, every congressman, congresswoman, and senator, because they need to be on record. If we have to beg you for this, we want to make sure that your constituents know. The immediacy of your response will give us an indication of the level of consciousness that you have. We want to commend those who are already on board. They've been named and mentioned. We appreciate them. But the fact that you can politicize this issue rather than humanize the issue says that you might not belong in a place of elected leadership. The public elects leaders in order to serve the needs of the public. And why would it be difficult to make a decision to support a bill like this? And I want to say this delicately but directly. If you've got to have the right person carrying this bill for you to support it, you're the wrong person in office. I want to say that all of us should be on the front lines as champions in this cause. And then secondly, pastors, I think we should also have a statewide and national conversation with men. The men in our churches, the men in our homes, the men in our schools. Because the buyers of sex drive this industry. And since the buyers are men who come out of our cities, out of our communities. The Congressman just read this press release, this statement from Fort Worth. Coaches, pastors, and others, these are men. And they're under someone's roof right now. They're in somebody's church right now. They're on somebody's school staff right now. We've got to say to men, you do not get to call yourself a man and treat our children like an animal. Should not happen. Should not happen. So we must call out those elected officials and call out the men who are pushing this industry by buying sex and treating our children and treating our youth like they're your property. That has to stop. And then finally, I want to say, as I listen to Natalie today, this teacher, I want to say a big part of the problem, as Courtney mentioned, teachers who was right before they couldn't see it. Yes. We need teachers against trafficking. Yes. We need teachers against trafficking. We need teachers against trafficking. And so I know when I say that, I know Jacqueline and Becca and Cesar and Courtney, they're going to have a program real soon to amass teachers against trafficking, because teachers are handling our children. They need to know what it looks like, what it sounds like, and students need to know they can go to a teacher. I close on this note. I am ashamed to say I live in the city and the state that's considered a leading hub for trafficking. I've been hearing this for 20 years. Yeah. I don't want to die. And Houston is still called a hub for trafficking. We always say Houston is a great city. Texas is a great state. By what measurement? By our oil, our industry? By what measure do we say we're a great city? How do we keep calling ourselves a great city if we sell our children? Yes. I think we need to change the measuring standard. We can become a great city when we reduce the number of children who are exposed to predators. Let's not measure our greatness on how tall our skyscrapers are. Let's not measure our greatness by how massive our incomes are. Let's measure our greatness by how safe we make little children. Let's measure our greatness by how secure we make our schools. Let's call ourselves great when people can say Houston conquered the issue and the scourge of sex and human trafficking. That's what we should live for. And that's what we would call great. Thank you very much, Congresswoman.
Thank you, Congresswoman, who's a champion on so many fronts, to my colleague Bishop. Proverbs, and to all of these champions that are getting heroes. Proverbs 14:34. Sin is a reproach to any people. Yes. Righteousness exalts a nation. Not riches, righteousness. And so, by that metric, we do see a large amount of room for improvement. Yes. I do want to advocate that some of the behavioral tendencies of our victims are quite profound, because they are behaviors that local pastors see quite a bit. And so I would like to advocate that we admonish all of our preachers to get in line, and pastors to get in line with this bill, support it. And then also for this bill to create a sensitivity to pastors that would see this and immediately have a resource to tap into to get our children some help. Just 2 weeks ago, I was visiting a local city park on the southwest side of Houston for an outreach event, a children's program going on there. And there was a strange gentleman who appeared to have mental deficiencies. Walking about premises, staring at children, staring at staff. I was happy I was there. We contacted law enforcement. And because he was posing no danger to himself and not threatening anyone around him, law enforcement could not even run his name to see if he was a sex offender. This is a program where parents were paying monies for their children to be in a safe place. And this offender continued to use restrooms that our children were using, having access that would have made any parent uncomfortable. We need our law enforcement to have the tools, and I believe this bill creates it, the tools to protect our families. And so I stand with you, Congresswoman, and we thank you for your work.
Let me take this collective moment to be able to thank this array of passionate fighters. I will not call anyone anything else but a passionate fighter. I will not call them DAs or police officers, but I will thank Mr. Middleton. I will thank Mr. Fabian. I will thank Mr. Ellis. I will thank my chairman, I'll call him that, who sees me on the floor and says we have to get this done. I will thank my other co-sponsors, and I will thank a leading advocate who has joined me, a man who knows what mission is all about. I will thank Mr. Hunt, Congressman Hunt, and I will thank, as Courtney has said, we're fighters. As Alan has said, we're fighters. As Eileen has said, we're fighters. As Angela has said, we're fighters. I want to rename her. Ling Lu, we know that we are fighters in the hearts of Jackie and Lou. And we want to thank Erica Lee Carter, Ms. Lopez, Bishop Livingston, Dr. Wright, our lieutenant, and our first officer, if you will, and our teacher and friend to Natalie. We want to thank all of them, and we want to make it very clear. What we have to do is what has been said in conclusion by our pastors. That is a concluding statement. We need members of Congress across America to be able to recognize that in their jurisdiction, they may have many concerns, but that children are being trafficked. Because as I started out, in all 50 states, calls are coming in about human trafficking. And that means that children are being victimized in all 50 states. It means that some parent is missing their child and not knowing today where they are. It's some school with a teacher who has an empty seat on where did that third grader, fifth grader, middle schooler, high school, they were here yesterday, where are they? What is that fight about in the school? How does a person just standing outside instruct into the school? And that online predator, which law enforcement is seeing all the time, online predator, luring a child out of their home, their church, their school. So I do call upon my colleagues to join us in moving H.R. 30. It is a bill that was passed last year out of the House, and the minutes of 2022 expired before we could finally get it passed out of the Senate. It is well known. We have great leadership in the Senate, including our senior senator. So we just need to be able to move this legislation. It is bipartisan, and to recognize that the more we delay, we walk out of this room, someone somewhere in Harris County is being trafficked. And Angela said, the brothels are in front of your eyes. They're in malls or strip centers, and you walk right by them to the cleaners, or you walk right by them to a box store, or you walk right by them to a specialty store. You're going on your business, and there's a brothel with young women right there. And it's someone, as Courtney said, near school. So I can't thank those who came out enough. This bill is not about an individual member. It is about putting teeth in this And once you pass a federal bill, you get the depth and breadth of the federal government saying it is a problem with our children. It allows local officials and federal officials to call on the Department of Education to work with school districts. Do you have a plan for fighting human trafficking? To work with teachers, do you have the resources, or the resources that come in, the school district can use them legitimately to educate and fight human trafficking. That's what happens when you pass a federal law for the nation. And I can't tell you how important it is. I can certainly say that the fright of this headline, so many frighten me. The fright of this headline is overwhelming. That it is a high school football coach, a youth pastor, a hospital district, and there has to be hospital director of operation. There has to be the king or the convener. That person is human trafficking, and they push these, answer the calls of these other persons who are requesting it, and they have a whole farm team of who they give them. Does anybody realize that? We must stop it with H.R. 30. Let our children not have to resort to this being the crayon and the picture that they have to do. Let them use coloring book for fun and not have to say, help me, after she was already abused. Already abused. I thank you all for being here. We have our challenge and we have our cause. And for me, we're going to answer that calling and that cause. Thank you all so very, very much. I don't know, are there any questions? Thank you all very much.